So what is the chance of finding quartz on your next rock hounding trip? Pretty good, I would say. Well, it depends on what you're going to find. Is it going to be worth something or not? So what are you going to find when you go out? Are you going to find something as beautiful as this? Or maybe something like that? So let me tell you my story. I'm after huge quartz crystals, and we go up to Zambia. And when we get to Zambia, we travel quite a distance into the bush, and eventually we come to this huge mine. I mean, Richelle, just show them the size of this parking area here. Okay, about the size of this parking area and double that. And going down about 2 or 3 stories into the ground, I find this huge hole. And then on the side of the pit, silhouetted against the sky, is this rusty old excavator. And then when you turn around, there's another one. So they worked 2 excavators in that pit to death to mine some of the largest crystals found. One of the crystals that came out there purportedly was 10 tons of crystal, and it was loaded into a container with great difficulty, transported from the mine to the container, and then off to China it went. So these are the fabled stories that goes around for us rockhounds looking for minerals in Africa. We got there, we looked around, and we knew that the pit was mined out. Why would they leave 2 excavators if there was still some crystals to be found? So I take a walk around, I find this tree, and I go and sit next to the tree. And as I looked around, I saw something shiny next to me. And I scratched in the ground and I picked it up. And wow, there was a crystal. Not like this, but similar to this. There was a crystal in the ground. Because the crystal had white needles inside. And the white needles turned out to be actinolite. Quite a rare inclusion in quartz. And on top of that, there was mica inclusions also in the quartz. I found a new type of quartz. To find a new type of quartz as nobody has ever found before, with a different type of inclusion. So I took this home, had a look at it, and decided to give it a name. Guess what I called it? I called it witch's fingers, because they looked like a witch's finger. Right, so quartz is one of the most common minerals found anywhere in the world. About 12% of our Earth's surface is just quartz. Let's have a look at some samples here on this side. This is smoky quartz. Have a look at that middle crystal. I don't know if you can see, but it's totally gem. And this one over here is much darker, which means that this one was irradiated to a higher degree than that one, because usually this is formed with irradiation, with some sort of uranium mineral, gem quality. I mean, like, take a look at that one, completely gem. Now these can be faceted. So when you go to Jusini in South Africa, you might pick up a rock that looks like that, a nondescript rock. So when you take that rock and you heat it and you open it, bam, you find a geode inside. And inside you might find some beautiful crystals like this one. Anything that's shiny is attractive to me. So I looked at this one and I saw these black needles inside. At first I thought that we've got black tourmaline, but after some study I found them to be goethite needles, which is quite rare. These are from Gebobosep in Namibia. That is a cavity in the ground, and these cavities would have a small crack from somewhere with superheated steam coming in, and this steam, as it travels past the host rock, it would eat up the host rock in that fissure or that crack, and then become mineral laden. And then once it hits the cavity, it would cool down and it would start to crystallize. And there's calcite crystals and an amethyst crystal.
And what would you describe this to be? This part of the tag-eye?
These are asbestos fibers, crocodilite fibers, that have been replaced by quartz, and therefore it's a quartz. So will you find gold when you find quartz? That's a good question. Now, one of the channels I follow is Dan Hurd, and Dan says if you see the quartz vein running up the mountain, follow it, and when you see sulfides in the quartz, when you see this inside the quartz, then you know that you might be close to gold. Not everywhere where you find sulfides will you find gold. I'll tell you an interesting story. In 1885, there was an Australian guy called George Harrison that was one of the people that came to the gold rush in South Africa, in the eastern Transvaal in that time. And Mr. George Harrison ran out of money as he came to Johannesburg area. And when he got there, he found a widow that wanted some building done on her house. And because he was a skilled craftsman, he then started building the house. And while he was building the house, he took his prospecting hammer and his pan, and he went out to an area where he could see quartz sticking out of the ground. Big boulders of quartz sticking out of the ground. In fact, it was so significant that the area was called Witwatersrand, which means white waters ridge, because from a distance it looked like white water. And Mr. Harrison took his hammer, he chipped away at the rock, he saw some sulfides there, and he panned it. And when he panned it, there was a rich vein of gold. But Mr. Harrison's mind was on going to the eastern Transvaal to go and mine gold there. It was not on mining gold at Johannesburg. But he knew that he had something and he needed money. So he went to the claims office and he claimed that area. He stuck pegs in and he claimed it, and then sold the claim to someone else for a tuppence. I don't know if it was £10 or something like that. It was quite cheap. And that turned out to be one of the most significant gold finds in the world. That is the story of gold and quartz. In Zambia, the biggest buyers of quartz are the Chinese. So a lot of the different kinds of quartzes are ignored. And I was shown some quartzes by a friend of mine from Zambia, and he brought these little beauties along. I mean, just look at that. Isn't that cute? So I traveled all the way up to the mine. The mine is like Murengon. It is like, that's an Afrikaans word for very far away. And when we got to the mine, it just rained. So there were crystals all over the ground. And some of them were double terminated. Most of them were little sceptre crystals. They were attached somewhere. And so I put in a team there. I think we were about 8 miners. And I put in a team. There was a cook, there was the mine boss, and a bunch of guys. And we had to build them huts. And we had to set up a schedule of mining and that. And they started mining. And I picked out the best pieces and I took them to Japan. And I mounted them on small tiles. And I was selling these beautiful little miniature thumbnails to the Japanese collectors. And that is, to me, one of the most satisfying things that I've done in my journey as a rock hound and as a dealer. And I thank you for watching this video. This means so much to me. Your subscription means so much to me. Watch our other videos and see how this dirty business here, all of this quartz is going to come out. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.
Yeah.